Colonel James Mitchell stood tall in his military uniform, his silver hair catching the morning sunlight as he approached the main gate of Riverside Military Academy. At 62 years old, he had served his country with honor for over 4 decades. His chest bore countless medals, each telling a story of courage, dedication, and sacrifice. But today was different. Today he carried a heavy burden in his heart. The academy gates loomed before him, the same gates he had passed through thousands of times. But this morning something felt wrong. Private Rodriguez, the young guard on duty, looked nervous as he saw the colonel approaching. The 23-year-old soldier had been working at the gate for only 6 months, but he had always admired Colonel Mitchell from afar. "Good morning, Colonel," Rodriguez said, his voice slightly shaking as he saluted. Colonel Mitchell stopped and looked directly into the young man's eyes. What he saw there made his heart sink even deeper. Fear, confusion, and something else he couldn't quite identify. "Son," the colonel said slowly, his voice carrying the weight of years of command. "I need you to listen to me very carefully." Rodriguez straightened his posture, expecting routine instructions about security or daily procedures. Instead, what happened next would change both their lives forever. The colonel reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. It was thick, official-looking, and bore the seal of the highest military command. Rodriguez had never seen anything like it before. "This morning I received orders that go against everything I believe in," Colonel Mitchell said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "Orders that would harm innocent people. Orders that would betray the very oath I took to protect and serve." The young guard's eyes widened. In all his training, nobody had prepared him for a moment like this. He had been taught to follow orders without question, to respect the chain of command above all else. But standing before him was a man whose integrity had never been questioned, whose reputation was spotless. "Sir, I don't understand," Rodriguez whispered. Colonel Mitchell stepped closer, ensuring their conversation remained private. The morning shift was changing and other soldiers would soon arrive. Time was running short. "Rodriguez, in about an hour, a convoy will arrive at these gates. The men inside will be wearing our uniform, carrying our credentials, but they are not here to serve our country. They're here to serve themselves." The young guard felt his knees go weak. This conversation was beyond anything he had imagined when he woke up that morning. The colonel continued, his words measured and deliberate. "Inside that convoy are documents that will authorize the illegal detention of 3 families living near the base. Good families, Rodriguez. People who have done nothing wrong except ask questions about what they've seen happening here at night." Rodriguez had noticed the unusual nighttime activities himself. Strange vehicles coming and going, unmarked helicopters landing in the restricted zones, and orders to ignore anything he might observe during the late shifts. He had assumed it was classified military operations. What they're planning violates every principle our military stands for, Colonel Mitchell continued. "It violates the Constitution we swore to defend. And I will not, allow it to happen under my watch." The weight of the moment pressed down on both men. Rodriguez realized that his next words and actions would define not just his career, but his character as a human being. Colonel Mitchell placed his hand on the young soldier's shoulder. "I'm asking you to do something that might cost you your career, son. When that convoy arrives, I need you to delay them. Ask for additional verification. Create bureaucratic obstacles. Give me time to make some calls, to alert people who can. Stop this before it goes too far." Rodriguez looked around nervously. The protocol was clear when official military convoys arrived with proper credentials. They were to be allowed immediate entry. Delaying them without authorization could result in court-martial. But as he looked into the colonel's eyes, he saw something that made his decision easier. He saw the same moral compass that had guided him to join the military in the first place. The same desire to protect innocent people and serve something greater than himself. Colonel Rodriguez said quietly, "What if they have direct orders from headquarters? What if they outrank both of us?" Mitchell nodded grimly. "They do outrank us, son. But sometimes doing the right thing means standing up to people who have more power than you do. Sometimes it means risking everything for people who can't protect themselves." The sound of approaching vehicles could be heard in the distance. The convoy was arriving earlier than expected. Both men felt their hearts racing as they realized their conversation had to end immediately. "Rodriguez," Colonel Mitchell said urgently, "I need to know right now. Will you help me, or will you follow orders that you know are wrong?" The young guard looked toward the approaching dust cloud on the horizon, then back at the man who had become a legend in military circles. In that moment, Private Rodriguez made a choice that would echo through the rest of his life. Private Rodriguez swallowed hard and nodded. "I'm with you, Colonel. What do you need me to do?" Relief washed over Colonel Mitchell's face, but there was no time to celebrate. The convoy was now visible. 3 black SUVs with tinted windows, moving fast toward the gate. Mitchell quickly explained the plan. "Check their papers twice. Ask for backup verification on the radio. Tell them the computer system is running slow today. Anything to buy me 15 minutes, the colonel instructed. As he hurried toward the security office, Rodriguez watched him go, then turned his attention to the approaching vehicles. His hands were trembling slightly as he adjusted his uniform and prepared for what might be the most important performance of his life. The lead SUV stopped at the gate with a sharp screech of brakes. The window rolled down, revealing a stern-faced man in a military uniform with the rank of major. His cold eyes immediately assessed Rodriguez with obvious impatience. "Open the gate, soldier." "We're on official business," the major commanded without preamble. Rodriguez forced himself to remain calm. "Good morning, sir. I'll need to see your authorization papers and identification, please." The major's expression darkened. "I don't have time for games. Here are our credentials." He thrust a folder through the window with obvious irritation. Taking the papers, Rodriguez began examining them with deliberate slowness. His heart was pounding so hard he was sure everyone could hear it. The documents looked official, proper letterheads, signatures, stamps, but something about them felt wrong. "These look good, sir," Rodriguez said carefully, "but I'll need to verify them through our database. Standard procedure for any operation involving civilian areas." "Civilian areas?" The major's voice rose dangerously. "Who told you this involved?" "Civilians." Rodriguez realized his mistake immediately. The colonel hadn't mentioned anything about civilians to him, at least not in front of others. He had just revealed that he knew more than he should. I just assumed, sir. When I see addresses listed in the documentation," Rodriguez stammered, hoping his explanation sounded believable. The major studied him suspiciously, then glanced at his watch. "You have 2 minutes to verify those papers, soldier. After that, you're opening this gate whether your computer likes it or not." Meanwhile, Colonel Mitchell was in the security office, frantically making phone calls. His first call was to Senator Patricia Hayes, a member of the Armed Services Committee who had served with him in Iraq years earlier. "Pat, it's Jim Mitchell. I need your help, and I need it now," he said when she answered. "Jim, what's wrong? You sound terrible. There's an illegal operation happening at my base. They're about to detain innocent families without proper legal authority. I need you to make some calls. Alert the right people." Senator Hayes had known Mitchell for 20 years. If he said something was wrong, she believed him without question. "Tell me what you need." As Mitchell explained the situation, he watched through the window as Rodriguez continued his delaying tactics at the gate. The young soldier was doing better than expected, but the major was clearly becoming more agitated. "I'm calling the Justice Department right now," Hayes promised. "And Jim, be careful. If you're right about this, there are people in very high places who won't appreciate being exposed." Mitchell's second call was to Captain Sarah Chen, a military lawyer stationed at nearby Fort Stevens. She had worked with him on several cases involving military law and constitutional issues. "Captain Chen, this is Colonel Mitchell. I need immediate legal counsel on a developing situation." "Of course, sir." "What's the nature of the situation?" Mitchell quickly outlined what was happening. Chen listened carefully, asking pointed questions. "About the documentation and authorization for the operation?" "Colonel, based on what you're telling me, this operation lacks proper judicial oversight. Detaining civilians requires specific legal processes that don't seem to have been followed here," she concluded. "What do I do, Chen? They'll be through that gate in minutes." "Document everything, sir. Record what you can. And Colonel, doing the right thing. even if it doesn't feel like it right now.
Back at the gate, Rodriguez was running out of stall tactics. Ow! The major had stepped out of his vehicle and was approaching the guard booth with obvious hostility. Ow! Soldier, you're...
2 minutes are up. Open this gate immediately, or I'll have you arrested for obstruction of military operations. Rodriguez looked toward the security office, hoping to see some sign from Colonel Mitchell. Through the window, he could see the colonel still on the phone, gesturing urgently. Sir, the system is still processing. It's just another minute or two. Please, Rodriguez tried. The major slammed his hand on the guard booth window. I'm done playing games. Stand aside. At that moment, Rodriguez made a decision that surprised even himself. Instead of stepping aside, he moved directly in front of the gate controls. I'm sorry, sir, but I cannot allow entry until proper verification is complete. Those are my orders. The major's face turned red with rage. Your orders? I'm giving you a direct order right now, private. Open that gate or face the consequences. Sir, my orders come from Colonel Mitchell, the commanding officer of this base. Till he authorizes your entry, this gate stays closed. The standoff had begun. Security office, Colonel Mitchell, had finished his calls and was now watching the confrontation unfold. He knew that Rodriguez was taking an enormous risk. He's potentially throwing away his career to buy precious minutes. The major pulled out his radio and began speaking rapidly to someone. Rodriguez couldn't hear the conversation, but he could see the anger and frustration in the man's body language. Within minutes, Rodriguez's own radio crackled to life. It was Colonel Mitchell's voice. Rodriguez, report to the security office immediately. Maintain your post until relieved. As Rodriguez walked toward the office, he could feel the major's eyes burning into his back. He had just defied a superior officer based on faith in a colonel who was asking him to risk everything. But as he entered the office and saw Colonel Mitchell's expression, he realized that their bold defiance had set something much larger in motion. Rodriguez closed the door and sit down, Colonel Mitchell said, his voice tense but controlled. Or through the window they could both see the major pacing angrily beside his vehicle, speaking rapidly into his radio. Sir, did I do the right thing? Rodriguez asked, uncertainty evident in his voice. Son, you just showed more courage in 10 minutes than most people show in a lifetime, Mitchell replied, placing a reassuring hand on the young soldier's shoulder. But I need you to know what we're up against now. Mitchell moved to his computer and pulled up several files. The families they want to detain live in the Maple Grove neighborhood, just 2 miles from here. The Johnson family, the Garcias, and the elderly Patel couple. All of them have noticed unusual activity at our base during late-night hours. Rodriguez leaned forward, studying the photographs on the screen. What kind of activity, sir? Weapons shipments that aren't in our official inventory? Meetings with people who aren't in our system. Money changing hands that doesn't appear in any budget reports. Mitchell's voice grew heavier with each revelation. Someone has been using our base for operations that have nothing to do with national security. Implications hit Rodriguez like a physical blow. Sir, are you saying there's corruption within our own command structure? I'm saying that the envelope I received this morning contained orders to silence witnesses before they could report what they've seen to outside authorities. And those orders came from someone with enough power to make them look completely legitimate. Rodriguez felt sick to his stomach. Everything he had believed about the military's integrity, about the chain of command, about following orders without question, was crumbling before his eyes. Colonel, what happens to us now? That major looked ready to court-martial both of us. On the spot. Mitchell walked to the window and observed the scene outside. The major had been joined by 2 other men in civilian clothes who had emerged from the second SUV. They were having an intense discussion, pointing repeatedly toward the security office. Rodriguez, I need to tell you something about my own situation, Mitchell said quietly. 3 weeks ago, I started asking questions about the nighttime activities you mentioned. I requested documentation, tried to access files, attempted to verify the authorization for these operations. What happened, sir? I was told to stop asking questions. When I persisted, I was informed that my retirement papers were being processed. Early, when I still wouldn't back down, I received those orders this morning. Orders that would make me complicit in covering up whatever is happening here. Rodriguez realized the full scope of what they were facing. This wasn't just about delaying a convoy or questioning suspicious orders. This was about exposing a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of military command. "Sir, do you really think we can stop this?" "Son, I made those phone calls for a reason. Senator Hayes is already making inquiries with the Justice Department, Captain. Chen is reviewing the legal aspects of those detention orders. And I sent copies of everything to 3 different news organizations." Rodriguez's eyes widened. "The media, sir?" "Sometimes, Rodriguez, the only way to ensure the truth comes out is to make sure it can't be buried. The people planning this operation counted on silence, on blind obedience, on nobody being willing to risk their career for strangers." At that moment, Mitchell's desk phone rang. The caller ID showed it was from the base commander's office, General Harrison, Mitchell's direct superior and longtime friend. "I have to take this," Mitchell said, gesturing for Rodriguez to remain quiet. "Jim, what the hell is going on down there?" General Harrison's voice was strained, almost desperate. "I'm getting calls from Washington about some kind of security breach at your gate." "Paul, I need you to listen to me very carefully," Mitchell replied, using the general's first name to emphasize their long friendship. "Are you aware of the operation that was supposed to begin at my location this morning?" There was a long pause. "What operation, Jim? I don't know what you're talking about." Mitchell felt a mixture of relief and concern. Relief that his friend wasn't part of the conspiracy, but concern about how high this corruption might reach. "Paul, someone issued detention orders using military authority to silence civilian witnesses. They're using our base, our resources, and our personnel for illegal operations, and they never informed you about it." "That's impossible, Jim. No major operations happen at any of my bases without my knowledge and approval. Check your secure files, Paul. Look for Operation Silent Valley. I guarantee you'll find documentation that you never saw and never approved." Rodriguez watched as Colonel Mitchell's expression changed during the phone conversation. Hope and determination replaced the worry that had been evident earlier. "Paul, I need you to contact base security immediately. Have them escort those men at my gate off the property. I need you to initiate an immediate investigation into unauthorized use of military facilities." After ending the call, Mitchell turned to Rodriguez with the first genuine smile the young soldier had seen all morning. "Rodriguez, General Harrison is a good man who's been kept in the dark about what's been happening here. But that's about to change very quickly." Through the window, they could see increased activity around the convoy. More people were arriving, including base security personnel who were approaching the major and his companions. "Sir, what happens now?" Rodriguez asked. "Now, son, we see if doing the right thing was worth the risk we both took. But I can tell you this, regardless of what happens to our careers, we'll be able to sleep at night knowing we stood up for innocent people." As they watched, the confrontation at the gate was intensifying. The major was arguing heatedly with the base security chief, waving documents and pointing toward the security office where Mitchell and Rodriguez waited. Within the hour, Riverside Military Academy transformed into a scene that resembled something from a movie. Multiple government vehicles arrived, including FBI agents, military police, and representatives from the Inspector General's office. The quiet morning had erupted into one of the most significant military investigations in the base's history. Colonel Mitchell and Private Rodriguez found themselves in the unusual position of being both witnesses and heroes in the unfolding drama. They were separated and interviewed extensively about everything they had observed, every conversation they had overheard, and every detail about the morning's confrontation. Special Agent Lisa Torres from the FBI took the lead in interviewing Colonel Mitchell. She was a serious woman in her 40s who had handled numerous military corruption cases throughout her career. "Colonel Mitchell, your actions this morning may have prevented a serious violation of civil rights," Agent Torres began. "But I need to understand exactly what led you to make such a dramatic decision." Mitchell recounted the entire story from the first suspicious activities he had noticed months earlier to receiving the unauthorized detention orders that morning. He provided copies of documents, phone records, in detailed observations that painted a picture of systematic abuse of military authority. The families they intended to detain had done nothing wrong except notice patterns that didn't make sense. Mitchell explained. Mrs. Johnson called the base several times, asking about late-night helicopter activity that was keeping her children awake. Mr. Garcia had photographed unusual vehicle movements and was planning to contact his congressman. About environmental concerns, Agent Torres made careful notes. And the elderly Patel couple? They had been documenting what they believed were safety violations, unmarked chemicals being transported through residential areas at night. They were simply trying to protect their neighborhood. Meanwhile, in another room, Rodriguez was being interviewed by Captain Chen, the military lawyer who had advised Colonel Mitchell earlier. She was impressed by the young soldier's integrity and clear recollection of events. Private Rodriguez, you understood that disobeying the major's direct orders could result in court-martial proceedings. What made you willing to take that risk? Captain Chen asked. Rodriguez considered the question carefully. Ma'am, when I joined the military, I swore an oath to protect and defend the Constitution. Colonel Mitchell helped me understand that sometimes protecting the Constitution means standing up to people who are violating it, even if they outrank you. That's a mature understanding of military responsibility, Private. Many soldiers never grasp that concept. As the interviews continued, the investigation was expanding rapidly. The major and his companions had been detained and were being questioned about their authorization for the morning's operation. Their answers were creating more questions than they resolved. The major, whose name was revealed to be Marcus Webb, claimed he was following direct orders from Pentagon officials. However, when investigators contacted those officials, they denied any knowledge of Operation Silent Valley or authorization for civilian detentions. The two civilian contractors, with Webb, provided conflicting stories about their involvement and the nature of their business, relationship with certain military personnel. Phone records were being subpoenaed, financial transactions were being traced, and a complex web of corruption was beginning to emerge. By late afternoon, the scope of the investigation had grown beyond anything Mitchell or Rodriguez had imagined. General Harrison called a base-wide meeting to address the situation and reassure personnel about the integrity of their installation's mission. Ladies and gentlemen, General Harrison addressed the assembled soldiers. This morning's events have revealed that our base was being used for unauthorized activities by individuals who do not represent the values and mission of the United States military, he continued. Colonel Mitchell and Private Rodriguez demonstrated exceptional courage and judgment in preventing what could have been a serious violation of civil rights and military protocol. Their actions exemplify the highest traditions of military service. The announcement sent waves of shock and admiration through the base personnel. Many had known Colonel Mitchell by reputation, but Rodriguez was just a regular soldier who had suddenly become a symbol of moral courage. Later that evening, Mitchell and Rodriguez were finally allowed to return to their regular duties, though both knew their lives had been permanently changed by the day's events. Rodriguez, Mitchell said as they walked together toward the barracks, I want you to know that what you did today will be remembered long after we're both gone from this place. You chose integrity over career advancement, truth over easy compliance. Sir, I just followed your example. If you hadn't been willing to risk everything to protect those families, I never would have found the courage to help. Mitchell stopped walking and looked directly at the young soldier. Son, courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is doing what's right even when you're terrified of the consequences. You were scared this morning, I could see it, but you did the right thing anyway. As they reached Rodriguez's quarters, both men were surprised to find a small crowd of fellow soldiers waiting. Word had spread throughout the base about their confrontation with the corrupt officials, and their colleagues wanted to express their support. Sergeant Maria Santos, respected non-commissioned officer, stepped forward to speak for the group. Colonel, Private Rodriguez, we wanted you both to know that what you did today made all of us proud to wear this uniform. You reminded us what we're really fighting for. The crowd of soldiers applauded, and Rodriguez felt tears forming in his eyes. He had risked everything that morning, not knowing if anyone would support his decision. He understood that integrity and moral courage were values that resonated throughout the entire military community. But neither Mitchell nor Rodriguez realized that the most significant consequences of their actions were still to come. 3 weeks after the confrontation at the gate, the investigation had expanded into a multi-state operation involving dozens of investigators and revealing a corruption network that reached far beyond Riverside Military Academy. Colonel Mitchell and Private Rodriguez found themselves at the center of a story that was making national headlines. The families they had protected, the Johnsons, Garcias, and Patels, had become unwitting symbols of civilian courage in the face of government overreach. When news organizations reported their story, it sparked a national conversation about accountability in military operations and the protection of whistleblowers. Maria Johnson, single mother of 2 young children, was interviewed by several major news networks. "I never imagined that asking questions about helicopter noise would put my family in danger," she said during one interview. "If Colonel Mitchell and that young guard hadn't stood up for us, I don't know what would have happened." The investigation revealed that the late-night activities at the base were part of an illegal weapons trafficking operation. Military equipment was being sold to private contractors, who then resold it to questionable buyers overseas. The profits were being shared among a network of corrupt military officials and civilian accomplices. Major Webb had led the convoy. That morning was facing federal charges for conspiracy, corruption, and violation of civil rights. During his interrogation, he revealed the names of other military personnel involved in the scheme, leading to arrests at 3 different military installations. But the most shocking revelation came when investigators discovered that the detention orders Mitchell had received were part of a broader plan to silence anyone who might expose the trafficking operation. The 3 families were not the only targets. Journalists, government auditors, and military personnel who had asked inconvenient questions were all being systematically intimidated or removed from positions where they could cause problems. Senator Patricia Hayes, who had received Mitchell's initial phone call, held a press conference to discuss the implications of the case. "What we've uncovered here represents a fundamental threat to the principles our military was created to defend," she announced to a room full of reporters. The courage shown by Colonel Mitchell and Private Rodriguez prevented not just the illegal detention of innocent families, but potentially saved our democracy from a cancer that was spreading through our most sacred institutions. Colonel Mitchell found himself testifying before a congressional committee about military corruption and the need for stronger whistleblower protections. His testimony was broadcast nationally, and his calm, dignified presentation of the facts earned him respect from people across the political spectrum. "Members of the committee," Mitchell said during his testimony, "the decision to defy those orders wasn't difficult once I understood what was at stake. The difficult part was accepting that people I had trusted and served alongside were willing to betray everything we had sworn to protect." Private Rodriguez also testified, though his appearance generated perhaps even more public interest. Here was a young soldier, barely out of basic training, who had risked his career to stand up for people he had never met. "I didn't think about being a hero," Rodriguez told the committee. "I just thought about whether I could live with myself if I let something wrong happen when I had the power to stop it." His simple, honest testimony went viral on social media, inspiring countless young people to consider careers in public service and reinforcing faith in the military among citizens who had been losing trust in government institutions. The media attention brought unexpected opportunities for both men. Mitchell was offered positions with several veterans organizations and think tanks focused on military reform. Publishers approached him about writing a book about leadership and integrity in military service. Rodriguez received scholarship offers from multiple universities, though he decided to remain in the military to complete his enlistment. His story had inspired him to consider a career in military law, following the example set by Captain Chen, who had become a mentor to him. But perhaps the most meaningful recognition came from an unexpected source. The families they had protected organized a community gathering to thank Mitchell and Rodriguez. Personally, the event was held in the Maple Grove Community Center. The the same neighborhood where the Johnson, Garcia, and Patel families lived. Nearly 200 people attended, including many who had been following the story in the news. Mrs. Patel, the elderly woman whose environmental concerns had made her a target, approached Mitchell with tears in her eyes. "Colonel," she said in her soft, accented voice, "my husband and I came to America 50 years ago, believing this was a country where ordinary people could speak truth to power without fear. What you and that young man did proved we were right to believe in America." Her husband, equally moved, shook hands with Rodriguez. "Young man, you remind me why we have always been proud to call ourselves Americans, even when America seemed to forget its promises." The Garcia family presented both men with a hand-carved wooden plaque that read, "To those who stand guard over justice, when justice cannot guard itself." But it was Maria Johnson's 8-year-old daughter, Emma, who provided the moment that would stay with both men forever. "Mr. Colonel and Mr. Guard," she said, using her own words to address them, "my mommy says you kept the bad people from taking us away. I made you this picture." She handed them a child's drawing showing 2 soldiers standing in front of a house with a family inside. Above the drawing, in crayon letters, she had written, "Thank you for keeping us safe." As the evening concluded, Mitchell and Rodriguez walked together toward their vehicles. The investigation was ongoing, trials were still to come, and their lives had been permanently changed by a single morning's decision to do what was right. "Rodriguez," Mitchell said as they reached their cars, "do you ever regret what we did that morning?" The young soldier looked back toward the community center, where families were still gathering to talk about the events that had brought them together. "No, sir," Rodriguez replied with conviction. "I think that morning showed me who I want to be for the rest of my life." 1 year later, the courthouse steps were crowded with reporters, activists, and ordinary citizens who had followed the corruption case from its beginning at Riverside Military Academy. The final sentencing hearing was about to conclude. What had become known as the Riverside Conspiracy. The outcomes would send shockwaves through military and civilian leadership across the country. Major Webb received a 15-year federal prison sentence for his role in the weapons trafficking operation and conspiracy to violate civil rights. 6 other military personnel received sentences ranging from 5 to 12 years, while 4 civilian contractors faced similar penalties. The network that had threatened innocent families and corrupted military operations had been completely dismantled. Colonel Mitchell stood on the courthouse steps, now retired from active duty, but serving as a consultant for military reform initiatives. The past year had been challenging but rewarding as he helped develop new protocols for preventing corruption and protecting whistleblowers within the military system. Beside him stood Rodriguez, now promoted to corporal and enrolled in evening law school courses. He had decided to remain in the military while pursuing a legal education. It's inspired by Captain Chen's example and his own experience with the intersection of law and military service. "Colonel Mitchell, Corporal Rodriguez," called out a familiar voice from the crowd. They turned to see Maria Johnson approaching with her 2 children. Emma, now 9 years old, ran ahead and hugged both men with the uninhibited affection that only children possess. "We wanted to be here for the final hearing," Maria explained. "This whole experience taught me that ordinary people can make a difference when they have the courage to stand up for what's right." Maria had used the attention from the case to become an advocate for government transparency and civilian oversight of military operations. She had testified before Congress twice and was now working with a non-profit organization focused on protecting communities near military installations. The Garcia family had also transformed their experience into positive action. Roberto Garcia had become a community organizer, helping neighbors understand their rights and how to report suspicious government activities. His documentation skills, which had made him a target of the corruption network, were now being used to help other communities protect themselves. Mr. and Mrs. Patel, the elderly couple whose environmental concerns had started the chain of events, had become unlikely celebrities in their neighborhood. Their small house had become an informal gathering place for community discussions about civic engagement and the importance of asking questions when something seemed wrong. "You know," Mrs. Patel had told a reporter the previous month, "we learned that democracy is not something that just happens. It requires ordinary people to pay attention and speak up when they see problems. As the crowd began to disperse from the courthouse, Captain Chen approached the group. She had been promoted to major and was now heading a new military legal division focused on preventing corruption and protecting service members who reported illegal activities. "Mitchell, Rodriguez," she said with a smile, "I wanted you both to know that the reforms we've implemented based on this case are already making a difference. We've had 12 reports of suspicious activities at various bases in the past 6 months, and every single one has been properly investigated." "That's exactly what we hoped would happen," Mitchell replied. "The system only works when people believe they can report problems without destroying their careers." Rodriguez nodded in agreement. "My law professors have been using this case as an example of how legal principles and moral courage have to work together. It's been strange reading about our own experience in textbooks." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Senator Hayes, who had authored new legislation strengthening whistleblower protections for military personnel. The bill, informally known as the Rodriguez-Mitchell Act, had passed Congress with overwhelming bipartisan support. "Gentlemen," Senator Hayes said as she joined the group, "I wanted you to know that your actions have inspired legislative changes that will protect service members for generations to come. Sometimes one moment of courage can change the entire system." As the afternoon sun began to set, the various groups started saying their goodbyes. Emma Johnson asked Rodriguez to sign her school notebook, where she had written an essay about heroes in everyday life. "Corporal Rodriguez," she said, "seriously, when I grow up, I want to be brave like you and Colonel Mitchell. I want to protect people who can't protect themselves." Rodriguez knelt down to her eye level. "Emma, you're already brave. You and your mom stood up for your community by asking questions and demanding answers. That's exactly the kind of courage that keeps America free." Colonel Mitchell watched this exchange with deep satisfaction. The events that had begun with a single morning's decision to do the right thing had created ripple effects that would continue for years to come as the group finally began to separate. Maria Johnson turned back to address both men one final time. People ask me if I'm angry about what almost happened to my family, but honestly, I'm grateful. What we went through showed me that there are still people in this country who will risk everything to protect strangers. That gives me hope for my children's future." Walking toward their vehicles, Mitchell and Rodriguez reflected on the unexpected journey that had brought them to this moment. "Sir," Rodriguez said, "do you think we'll ever face another situation like that, morning at the gate?" Mitchell considered the question carefully. "I hope not, son. But if we do, I know that we'll do the right thing again, because that's who we've chosen to be." As they parted ways, both men carried with them the knowledge that their brief moment of defiance had protected innocent families, exposed a dangerous conspiracy, and strengthened the very democracy they had sworn to defend. The guard's silence that morning had spoken louder than any words could have. Rodriguez's willingness to stand with Colonel Mitchell despite the risks had proven that courage is contagious, that integrity can inspire others to act, and that sometimes the most important battles are fought not on distant battlefields, but at the gates of our own institutions. Years later, when military academies taught courses on leadership and ethics, they would study the morning when a colonel's bold defiance met a guard's principled silence, and how their combined courage had shaken an entire corrupt system to its core. The story became a reminder that democracy depends not on grand gestures by famous leaders, but on ordinary people making extraordinary choices in moments when doing the right thing requires risking everything they hold dear. Colonel Mitchell eventually wrote his memoir titled Standing Guard: When Silence Speaks Truth to Power. The book became required reading at military academies across the country. Rodriguez completed law school while serving his country, eventually becoming a military lawyer who specialized in protecting service members who reported corruption and illegal activities. The families they had protected continued their quiet lives, but with a deeper understanding of their role as citizens in a democracy. Their children grew up hearing the story of the morning when two soldiers chose to protect their neighbors rather than follow illegal orders. And many of those children would go on to careers in public service, inspired by the example they had. witnessed the Riverside Military Academy installed a plaque near the main gate where the confrontation had taken place. It read simply, "Courage is not the absence of fear, but action in spite of it." Here 2 soldiers chose courage over compliance, integrity over ease, and justice over silence. But perhaps the most fitting tribute came from Emma Johnson, who kept the drawing she had made as a child when she graduated from high school as valedictorian. She spoke about the morning that had shaped her understanding of citizenship and courage. "I learned that heroes don't wear capes," she told her graduating class. "Sometimes they wear uniforms and stand at gates, choosing to protect people they've never met because it's simply the right thing to do. That's the kind of person I want to be, and that's the kind of country I want to help build." The ripples of that single morning's courage continued to spread, touching lives and inspiring actions in ways that Colonel Mitchell and Private Rodriguez could never have imagined. Their story became proof that in a democracy, every person has the power to stand guard over justice, and that sometimes the most profound changes begin with the simple decision to do what's right, regardless of the cost.